Party. Let's call to order this January 24th meeting of the Montpelier Planning Commission. First thing we have to do is approve the agenda, so everyone can take a look and move to approve.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion from John. Do we have a second?
We'll second that motion.
Second from Gabe. Was it Gabe or Aaron?
It was me, Aaron. But
Aaron.
I can give it to Gabe if he wants.
No, Gabe was really confused. I just saw his mouth moving. I guess he was talking to himself. I heard your voice out of his mouth. It was weird. Okay, a motion from John, a second from Aaron. Those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, no opposed. Moving along. We have comments from the chair. I don't believe I have anything. Thank you, Mike, for the fabulous memo. I've been going through it. When we get to it, I'll just share screen and pull it up. But thank you very much. Does anyone else have any news or anything to mention?
I guess the only thing I'll point out is there was the legislature passed S222, something like that, went through and was signed by the governor that says that we don't have to host sites anymore if we choose not to. I didn't put it on the agenda. I've generally kind of staffed here, but we'll see if it makes sense to kind of remove this or make this as an option. If anyone in the public want to attend a planning commission meeting and doesn't have Zoom, they can always contact me and I can always make sure that I'm here, somebody's here to make this room available. But as you guys know, unless there was a public hearing on the zoning, I've pretty much been here by myself. So we can always kind of play that by ear over the next couple of meetings. And if it doesn't make sense to have me come in to host a meeting site where nobody's going to show up, then we can just go fully virtual.
Yeah, it seems fine by me. Okay, thanks, Mike. Let's jump into things. Mike said there's no one here for general business, so we'll move through that and on to review of the zoning amendment memo. I'm going to share screen now and pull up Mike's memo. Before anyone gets concerned, I don't plan to read it all out loud. I'll just point out the stuff the changes, the little tweaks I've made so far, and then we can just go through and people can point out page to page if they have flagged anything for the page. All right, let's do that. Okay, everyone see it?
Yep.
Okay. So assuming folks have gotten a chance to read through this, how about before I assume that, do people feel like they want to take a few minutes and do a read through right now, individually? Does anyone feel like that would be beneficial?
You mean like you reading it out loud or giving it to me?
No, sir. No, sir. Just we can take a silent 5 and people can read through it if they want.
All right.
I don't even like reading bedtime stories, so you know. Does anybody need time? Okay, let's go. Just at the second sentence here, I made a little change, just for clarity, and made some changes farther down. I mentioned the projects being proposed as potentials, just to emphasize that. I mentioned that we unanimously recommended the changes for approval, because I think that should have some weight to it, that the staff and all members of the Planning Commission are all in agreement on all this. Mike did great. I mean, I just haven't changed much at all, really. So, he goes through the explanation of the first change.
Yeah, so I just tried to go through and insert. So, I mean, there was some comments in the Planning Commission public hearing that we weren't giving enough information. I do plan to work with the Regional Planning Commission to come up with the draft zoning map. So I plan to replace the images. Hopefully that'll help clarify some of this with a slightly better image. But I did want to go through and have the specific amendment, a little bit of the background, summarize the public comments as, not to put a lot into it, but just to summarize the public comments, and then put your recommendation and my recommendation, which are generally the same with the exception of number 8. So.
Okay. I hadn't gotten a number 8, so I didn't know that.
And just to clarify, Mike, this is going to be made available to the public as well for the meeting, right? So we kind of have 2 audiences.
Yes, it'll be available to the public as well. So, yeah, it hasn't been made public yet because I wanted to make sure you guys, because your name was on it, wanted to make sure you guys had the opportunity to review it and
Right.
your edits.
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Mike. The only thing that popped out at me was number 8, mostly because I remember there being this conversation about, was it like a council on aging or something like that, talking about, this, the changes and maybe wanting to have some better review procedures. But I didn't get from that you were not, the staff was not in favor. That was the only thing that just took me by surprise a little bit to see that. Maybe I was alone, but I heard you mention that, but I didn't get the impression that the staff wasn't in favor of the change.
Yeah, and maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been at the meeting. I mean, I support the idea.
AARP, that was it. Yeah.
AARP and Congress for New Urbanism. So yeah, I did, I think this is a good idea that we're thinking about. I just would not go through and make that change at this time because I think Congress of New Urbanism, I tend to agree with them on this point that I don't think our regulations are sufficient to ensure that we've got, that bad projects won't happen as a result of that change.
I have one question. Who's our local architect?
That was Sandy Vitzium.
Okay. And you think they'll know what that means when they see that?
Enough of them probably will.
Okay. So, okay. I mean, that's your comment, so I won't change that.
Yeah, it was discussed a little bit above.
Yeah.
I still didn't use her name, but I did mention.
I've kind of struggled with that too, where, I mean, in a general sense, she kind of came out against everything. And I'm not sure how to point out that kind of feedback. That's why I changed on the first recommendation, but overall the commenters were in support of the change, because I got the impression that Sandy did not like any of them. So I even thought about mentioning that there were 1 or 2 people at the hearing that were generally against everything. I'm not sure if that's helpful to add, though. I just don't want them to think that their comments were unrepresented if they happen to see this. But yeah, so I haven't made any change, but I'm just bringing that up in case the Planning Commission has thoughts. So I'm going to keep going through sequentially, and we'll get back to 8 in a second. Heaton Avenue, it looks good. Mike explained some of the miscommunication that went on. Another thing, I didn't add anything, but I kind of feel like with Heaton Avenue, some of the initial outrage was people who just didn't understand like much at all about what was going on, like even the basics, and I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but it seems like after that initial outrage, which was like kind of pre-hearing, and people were corrected on some assumptions they had, that there wasn't a whole lot against it after that. But I think the write-up's probably fine as is. That was just one thing on my mind. I changed covenant to easement in this case just for clarity, so that people understand that it's the same thing as what's referenced above.
Okay. I apologize if there's any typos. I got this done at like 4:30 on Friday and then had to go out, and so I just sent it out on Saturday. I never proofread it, so you may find some typos or something in there that I didn't catch because I did not proofread it. But
I made a couple of changes. If anyone else noticed any, point them out. And maybe after this meeting, I can go through for that and like finish a review for that. Northfield. This, of course, is the most controversial one. I appreciated Mike's explanation here in pointing out that the process for going from rural to Res 9 and how it's connected with the sewer. So I thought that was fine. Does anyone have anything on this section?
I think one question I had was whether in the Planning Commission there was a question about the new neighborhood development, and I wanted to make sure that I got what your question was. Did I accurately capture what the question was? Kind of like, the commission recommends approval of this change. That said, they were interested in knowing if Habitat, or I guess I should say we, considering this is you're the authors as well, interested in knowing whether Habitat could still develop their project if they used or were required to use one of the planned unit developments, specifically new neighborhood development, section 3404. They felt council should consider the answer to that question in your deliberations. This could impact the decision in number 7 below, where the city will discuss whether to remove the requirement to use new neighborhoods on projects with more than 40 units. So I wanted to make sure I captured your question, because I'll reach out to Zach to get what his response will be to that.
Can I just clarify that we didn't, the question, I remember this discussion, but I just want to make sure that if Habitat could do their project in a planned use unit development, we wouldn't change our recommendation here to rezone, correct? Because it would still have to rezone for the density requirements. It would just be the open space that the PUD would allow for. Did I get that right?
Correct, and maybe I should move this down to number 7. Maybe it would be more accurately placed down in number 7. I think we had.
Oh, because it would modify
here.
7.
Yeah, in my notes we had the discussion up here, but maybe it would fit more appropriately down in number 7.
Yeah, that might make more sense to have it there, because either way, we're recommending that the rural designation is changed.
Okay, I marked it. I'll send you this marked up version, Mike. And thanks, Marcella. And that is a good point. I think I was thinking that maybe that they could use the plan unit development and keep it at rural, but probably not, right?
I guess I'm not clear on that either. Is it because I was thinking the rural is a no access to sewer and water and a certain level of density, and I didn't feel like a project could, because it would have access to sewer and water and it would have a higher density.
And I think the number of units wouldn't work out if it stayed as rural, because I believe he's trying to cost out around 50 units. And being 58 acres, rural is 1 acre per 2 units, so they would only have 20 something units available to them. And I think even with those density bonuses, I doubt they would be doubling. I don't have my regulations in front of me, but I don't know if you'd be doubling your density.
Okay, so probably not.
But I think at the time when we discussed it, we thought it would be better. It could be a good thing because it would help provide that park, that open space protection that was the main concern.
I think the idea was that if this project fell through, that it would be zoned in a way in which we would hopefully attract a similar project if we did it that way, where a PUD is needed. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe this could be a distraction, and I don't know. Maybe it won't matter for city council, but it seems like they're going to probably have a lot of questions to understand what we're trying to say here. But I don't know. That's my way of opening the door to, like, if people, now that you're seeing it, feel like it could be removed, or if you want to advocate for why you don't think it's a distraction. So keep it in for now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I put the words in there just because I wanted to make sure you guys, I'm trying to cite your words, so I just wanted to make sure we're on board with how it's phrased, so.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, we asked you to include it because we wanted to make city council aware of that different option that we had considered. We didn't end up voting to make that our recommendation, but it was something that at least some of us thought was a different viable path for this.
It does seem like it has in this location has the potential to be a distraction or misleading. I mean, I feel like everyone is on board for rezoning the area, and the question of the new neighborhood PUD is a separate one on, perhaps that's an avenue to ensure or address some of the neighbors' concerns. But I don't feel like the idea of keeping it in the same zoning district and then suggesting that they could use the PUD to get to where they need to go was what anyone had in mind. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll probably put if we move that to number 7, which I think is where we're going, then I'll probably put a bullet here just noting that there will be additional comments on this project in number 7, just so that there's something that clues the council in that, keep this in mind when we get to number 7, and then we can have that further discussion there.
Yeah, something like, C number 7 for a related issue or something. Okay. Sounds good. So we've gotten to the end of where I was done with the editing, actually. So I'm gonna have to come back through this, but we have number 4 about the side setbacks. 5 about the rail setbacks.
Yeah, I added in some language, the language from Alicia into this, and I'm working on the strikeout copy as well.
Is this going to be a separate strikeout copy, or it's going to be all one document?
There's a memo, and then there's the officially we have to have a strike-through copy, a red line copy, but a lot of times that doesn't give a lot of context when, for example, number 8, the recommendation to remove density is just on a table, there's a strike through that eliminates residential density. There's no explanation to it. So technically, what the city council will vote to approve or not approve is the red line strikeout that we then just accept changes on. This is just meant to kind of summarize. All right, so what does it mean if we strike out that residential density requirement? Or
Okay.
what do we do if we add, in this case, add a setback to rail lines?
So we have number 6, the new PUD rules. Seven is the removal requirement to use new neighborhood and conservation PUDs.
And I put in a lot more explanation in here, and you guys are welcome to review this between now and the next meeting if you want. Again, the city council isn't going to take this up until March 23rd, I believe. We'll have to have a final draft by the time we get to March 1st, so I can warn it with your memos and everything. But we can go through and edit this at the next meeting as well. I did kind of go through, as you go through it, what are the issues with some of the mandatory PUDs, and so I tried to just go through some of the examples of things that could be issues. So you guys can certainly go through and edit those down or edit those out if you want.
It did feel like a lot, and could be summarized by, has administrative challenges. Some of this feels like a bit of I don't want to say a straw man, but not a strong argument, one way or another for anything. But yeah, I think if we can, this is a long memo, and as far as, life in 2020 goes, and our people's capacity to read more than 12 pages, this might be a place where we can cut down on, there are some administrative challenges, and if anyone's really interested, we can go into it. But these hypotheticals on, I could answer some of these, but no one's proposing this, so that's why I say it feels like a little bit of a straw man, and there are very few parcels where this would kick in, so it seems like this could be cut down.
I could give it a go, because I'm planning to continue editing and send it to everyone. And yeah, we could throw it on the agenda next time, just briefly. We don't need to go through it necessarily, but just give everyone a heads up and get an opportunity to get some further comments before we approve it next time. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, John, and I think I could probably narrow it down. And if Mike has an issue with what I end up doing to summarize it, then you can bring it up at the next meeting, Mike. And yeah, as far as getting this approved, it'd be great to get it approved next time, so then we can get it on the website and get it out there for people well in advance of March. So that's one thing we talked about last time, is we want to make sure that we're sending it out everywhere we can to give everyone the best chance of seeing it. Okay, so I'll note that as something to work on. And then number 8. Appreciate that Mike did his best effort of writing a persuasive explanation, even though he wasn't ultimate. Well, then again, I understand that in the long run you are in support of it. And then
Just a related thought on this, Kirby, if we do just continue as is, maybe we should consider in our plan conversation updates to the design review.
That's actually what I want to do right now is under the planning commission recommendation. I know this can be tricky, like in a group like this, but kind of flesh out our thinking. I don't want to do with everyone involved. Okay.
Yeah, come on. Still in your meeting? Yeah, Plan Commission. 5:30, 7:30.
Okay, that's kind of off the top of my head, but the idea is to get the message across that we're asking to go ahead and do this. I mean, we're in there making zoning changes. Let's make the changes. I mean, I think the argument against waiting is who knows how long that could be. So we can do this, and then we can revisit the design review. Because my understanding is that we want to make sure that the design review covers everything, every neighborhood that does not have a density cap, and we want to try to improve the design review process and get input from Congress of New Urbanism doing that. I don't see one as, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure if it's worth mentioning, but as a planning commission, our statutorily, like, we can have these regulations and impose these zoning restrictions on people if we find that they are in the public interest and in the health welfare of our community. And I'm not sure that we've seen any evidence that suggests that these density restrictions result in any public good in areas where we have an abundance of public services and where we'd like to see development.
I really liked that last part. Can you repeat it?
No.
Like we fail to see how these density requirements help the public good.
Well, or right, or are in the public interest. How will these, whether it's low or high density, we've seen plenty of bad design. I'm not sure the density restrictions promote good design in any way. So what is the argument for these density restrictions? And that's at least my mindset as we look at everything. I don't start with the preconception that whatever regulation we have is good and is the reason for any good. In fact, if you look at development that's happened since zoning, in the most case, most of us would probably argue that some of the best development in all of Montpelier happened before there was any zoning. So I don't start with the idea that because the regulation exists, it exists for a purpose or it's good. Try to evaluate it on its kind of like a zero-based budgeting approach to our zoning. But I can't say that it's the case for every. I don't want to speak for everyone. So.
I mean, I wouldn't mind throwing in a sentence that's saying effectively what you're saying, that currently we don't think that this is doing anything anyway. So removing it now, removing it later, what's it matter? How do other people feel about making that statement? Or, if it gives anyone pause, we don't have to go there.
Well, I like something like that. If John could remember how he said it before, it sounded better. It was more elegant the way he said it the first time.
Well, I think I tried to capture John's elegant statement when I said that accordingly we feel confident that the further we fail to see how density requirements in this area promote good design or any public good. I know I missed a little bit of his elegance.
It's on tape. It's on tape.
It's all on tape. I was going to say that. It's all on tape. We can go back and steal
It's a lot of work. I guess I don't need to say quickly, so I don't need to make a promise that I'm not certain we'll keep. Is everyone okay with that? Want to add or subtract anything? Someone who's not me can feel free to rewatch this tape and paraphrase John better.
I think it's lovely.
You okay with it, John? Did I miss any of your great salient points?
Looks great.
Okay. Is anyone opposed to adding this to the memo? Okay. Staff recommendations. So we see that from Mike. I'm not going to touch Mike's words. And then we have the minor technical fixes. Did anyone have anything they noticed in this section?
Yeah, this one got a lot longer because I did kind of have to go through each one of them and take what were really short and insert in the reasons why. This one we should stop at. The clarification on the hearings for state wetland permits. So somebody pointed out to me some confusion in the language, the way it was worded. This came up last Thursday. And so I took a look at it and they were right. The language, what was amended, so there's a statement that says only if it's on the map gets regulated. Then there's an exception, and then we put an exception to the exception. And then it says, well, if you're in the exception, so it's like, well, wait, we got two exceptions going on, and now it's confusing. So I sat down and came up with a draft to fix the structure and makes it much clearer, it takes the ambiguity out of it, but it doesn't really change the intent too much. So you'll see under the background at the bottom of that where the two bullet points are, unfortunately the amendment was poorly written, so it should be an is, and so it is unclear what exception is being referenced. So then there's a little change. So we just moved the two references into it, into the next sections down. Because really what we wanted to be able to do is say, we only regulate what's on our natural resources map. That's what we've agreed to all along. We enforce to a map, and it's the adopted map. And then we go through, in the next thing, to go through and say, if you get a state permit, then you don't need to meet the requirements below. And unfortunately, we had kind of put that into the applicability, and we really should have put that into the next statement below on the requirements. And then what came up was, and what we were trying to fix this time around, was to go through and say, yeah, but what about the hearing? So they're exempt from the regulations, but they still have to go through the hearing process. And that doesn't make any sense. So we said, all right, well, they should be exempt from the hearing as well. And so we tacked that onto the bottom, and we ended up with this big, long mess in 3006B. And so what I did was kind of pluck those two out of B, put one of them in C, which says who needs to have a hearing, and put one of them in D, which says what rules do you need to meet, to kind of go through and say, you don't need a hearing if you get your state wetlands permit, and you don't need to meet these requirements if you get a state wetlands permit. So unfortunately, you guys have already forwarded or somewhat voted. Unless you guys want to vote to reconsider, we can take that up at the next meeting. When I've got the strikeout, you guys can take a look at the strikeout and see if you like the change. And if you guys want to reconsider, you guys can go and reconsider your decision because council hasn't taken it up. But otherwise, I'll just have city council take it up at their level to go through and make that correction. Hopefully it'll make more sense when you see the strikeout.
Seems maybe simpler if we go ahead and approve it, so you don't have to go through all the full explanation with city council.
Okay, well, I can put that on, I can put a reconsideration on. Everybody voted in favor of it, so the way Robert's rules works, if people care, is that it would take a person who was in the affirmative to make a motion to reconsider, and then we would just vote. But we would put that on the agenda for next time, to have a motion to reconsider. Then we vote on the change, and then that officially becomes the new recommendation.
Sure, we can do that before we just. Not that we legally have to or anything, but we'll vote to approve the memo next week as well. So maybe we can do that vote and then do a memo vote following.
Yeah, I'm always careful about the zoning, the process. I'm usually whatever about, but when it comes to a zoning amendment, somebody else has an axe to grind will go and hammer us, but for the fact that it was sent and then it was changed and it shouldn't have been changed and it would have had to have been reconsidered. So that's why I was being a little specific about following the Roberts rules at the next meeting to make sure that we do it right, so it's all in the minutes correctly.
I'm
otherwise.
Completely, no, we're making a substantive change, so we should revote. And there should be notice, Okay, if everyone's all right with that, I think that that's better than Mike's not at city council having to explain the whole saga behind why there's this oddball thing in there.
I think that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. Is there anything more on this item, Mike?
No.
Okay. I'm not gonna touch this. I'll let you just redo this accordingly. So, like as if we did approve it,
Okay.
and then if something different goes down, we'll go from there. So next we have the signs change. Is this the Domino's amendment, by the way?
No, the Domino's amendment went through
Okay.
in the past. This one was capturing two other oddities that were sitting out there. Fences.
Other technical
Typo.
changes. Solar access and shading.
So I put a little more in here because we got a little bit more public comment in here.
Yeah, I thought the solar access and shading could be a little clearer, or I didn't feel like necessarily some of the argument was as strong as it could be, because I feel like, you know, in theory, we all, of course, we're like, we want to promote solar access, but it seems like the reality of this is, well, we know that this regulation either prevents additional housing units, or it certainly adds to the cost of housing units for whatever analysis you need to do. But it also doesn't, we haven't seen any evidence that it supports additional or preserves solar access and reduces shading and talk about shaving here as I try to approach Aaron's beard length, but you know, the reality is we know most shading occurs from trees, not buildings, and most solar panels are now being put on roofs, and new roofs, not people's yards. So I don't know. It seemed like this made it more of a gray area, or a little more complicated. I guess there is like the nod to trees, but I'm not sure if we wanted to make it clear like this regulation can prevent new housing units, adds to the cost of any new housing units, and we haven't seen any evidence that it supports solar access or reduces shading on areas where we would have solar devices.
Okay.
I mean, I think if I had my way, I wouldn't have these rules, the solar access rules at all. But trying to thread the needle between, there is public support for that in some corners, some very public support for it. So, but when this was originally proposed, you know, in all honesty, when this was originally proposed and how it was proposed, we did our professional directing of the rules to place it in a location where it would only apply in limited situations. It did not accidentally end up where it ended up, but it still will affect, you know, some projects. So, you know, I wouldn't have put it in here in the first place, but it made it in here and it has some public support. So I feel at least getting it to a point where it's less of a burden is an improvement over where we were at, or where we are at today.
Yeah,
Okay,
existing
I'll try to-
PV the existing, I think everyone supports the existing PV, and it would probably be pretty hard to develop something to shade someone's existing roof mounted PV, right? Panels. Like, I don't think that's going to get in the way of a whole lot, or I don't feel like that's the issue.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a very specific case of somebody who puts up just a solar rack near their property line in a district where somebody, then puts a 2-story house, then, during December, you might get some shading on it. And I think if I was investing $30,000 into solar panels, I probably would try to make sure I was putting it in a place where that would never, where the risk of getting shaded by a future project is limited. But yeah, I think if it's on the roof of a house, it would be very difficult to be shading. I don't think very often people shade other people's roofs, but we have a lot of topography around here, so it wouldn't take much for somebody who's got a house on a hill in back of them that happens to be south to make a difference.
Okay, I'll try to shorten this and try to leave Mike's points while adding those that John just made. Does anyone have anything else on number 9? And then we have the river hazard area regulations. Does anyone have anything on this? Okay. So I'll do some further tinkering right after this meeting. Send this around to everyone. Plan to vote next week. Before that, we'll vote on amending our original vote to encompass
The wetlands fix at number 6.
it's part of number 9. It's like lumped in technical.
Yeah.
But yeah, this wetlands fix. I'm not going to change the language though, Mike. I'm just going to leave that to you to reorganize it accordingly.
Yeah, as I said, it was a little bit tough to kind of decide how much to do. I knew this was going to make it a lot longer, but I also, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you make it too short, then, we got complaints that we weren't doing a good job of explaining these. And if you make it too long, then everyone's going to say, well, there's an awful lot here. Can't you make it shorter? So considering this is being directed to the city council, and the councilors historically have been very good about doing their homework. So I think even if the counselors don't fully read through it, even if they pick certain ones that they want to read through, I will summarize it in the hearing process, and they'll have all the information they need. If they want to know more, they will have the information they need to drill down. And that was where I was going with it. Even though I know it's going to make it longer, I think it's the information's there if people want to look for it. I recognize that probably 5 people will read it, but at least people can't say we didn't give them the information. And I will still try to work to get those images updated. I recognize those were not very good images. They were kind of stolen out of the existing zoning map, but now that we've kind of gotten this far, I'll go through and have a draft map pulled together by the Regional Planning Commission. So those will have probably, where it's a green changing to a yellow, it'll probably have yellow stripes through it or something like that. So that way it'll have a hash line so people can see what's changing. I guess while we're doing a little bit of reconsidering, Marcella made a good point about the first one, and I kind of wanted to go back and think about that. So in that first one there, the image, if you go down a little bit, in the image we were talking about right where the first O is in wood, there was that property that is on Whittier Street that we kept out. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought that was a mistake, and I think Marcella was right. If I were in that house, sitting on a porch on that house, if it has a porch, and someone were to ask me, well, what neighborhood am I in? I think it's really hard to go through and say, I'm on the College Street neighborhood, and the properties to my left and the properties to my right are all in this other neighborhood. It fronts on that street, and I think even though it would change the zoning, a larger parcel, they would have more ability to develop, blah, blah, blah. I think I would go with what Marcella said. I think that property should be included and make that slightly bigger. Add that 20th parcel in. But that would be up to you guys to reconsider as well, if you guys wanted to reconsider it. Like I said, it was just when I was driving home and thinking a little bit more about it, I was like, based on the parcel size, I didn't include it, but I think the reality is if you were to tell me that one house on that street, in the middle of that street, is not a part of the neighborhood, even though it's on the street with all the other houses, I think is a mistake. So
I'll move that we do what Marcella said.
I think, is there a problem with notice at this point though, Mike? Like informing the property owners and
Yeah, I have the same
getting their input.
yeah,
question.
I mean, if we're looking at this from the legal standpoint, no, there's no issue. We can change. We could have done all of this without notifying any of the property owners. We went above and beyond and try to go above and beyond to make sure we don't do something that the public is going to be upset about, that we changed the zoning and didn't let them know. But legally, we can make the change. And what I would probably do is decide if we're going to, I would probably just send them a notice, it's probably very similar to this, that would just go through and send them, I could probably send them an individual letter that just goes through and say, hey, I wanted to let you know we had a zoning change that was going to impact Whittier and Harrison Ave. And we didn't include you in the original proposal, and we decided to include you in the other proposal. This is the impact on your property, because it's really the only parcel that we're changing.
Would it be too much to call them so that?
I don't know who they are, so I don't have phone numbers for them. I mean, we would probably make sure we got a letter to them. And I can check. Sometimes the assessor, sometimes folks, have a more direct contact. If they've gotten a zoning or a building permit, we might have something on file in our computers. I mean, we can do a little bit of homework to see if we can, make that a more personal connection.
Yeah, I feel like if they have questions, that calling them would let you just resolve any issue right then and there. With a letter, they may have outstanding issues, and don't want to see like our good intentions be, rewarded with someone angry. But yeah, if you can send them a letter and call them, let them know that this is being considered, that'd be fine when we open it up next time. We were planning to vote to open it up to amend our original vote at the next meeting. So that's when it would happen anyway.
So the only other one that may come up, that won't come up for you guys, but you guys may hear about in a big circle. And maybe I'll hold off on that one because it's going to be a little bit more confusing. It'll be easier once it's here. So there may be there's been somebody else who just needs a boundary line adjustment, but it's also on a zoning district in order to fit a project in. So it will probably be clear, and probably better if I wait till we've got the proposal. But they're not quite ready, so they're going to try to submit it to the city council. If the city council takes it up, they have to send it back to you by law. So you guys may get something on the rebound, but it just happens to be a zoning boundary that has to move with the parcel boundary, so that would be a connection there.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so we have a plan for next time. Finish this, get it out to the public right away afterwards. I'm gonna stop sharing screen if I can. And next on the agenda is a review of economic development goals and strategies. We also have a pile of minutes to do. And before that pile gets any larger, I want to just go ahead and say, let's make sure whatever we're going to do. And maybe we can just do like a cursory review of the strategies, and because I don't think we have time to fully digest everything, but we'll see how it goes. But just to give you a heads up that maybe around 7, I want to move on to the minutes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were even going to get to these, but I had them done, so I wanted to make sure we got them. I got them out to you guys in advance. So you'd have a chance to take a look at them.
Yeah, thanks again. I see you've obviously done a lot of work lately. So if everyone goes into the Google Drive, you'll see that the revised template for the economic development goals and strategies now has a lot of strategies.
This is the Excel document, right, Mike?
Yes. And I think I made a new one. So it should be revised PC template economic development, because I didn't want to delete what you guys originally had. So I felt it was better. We'll kind of archive what we did originally, because I don't think I made changes to aspirations, but I did make a couple of tweaks to the goals. Now I got to try to remember completely what they are, and maybe that's the advantage of having the other one still in existence. Economic development. Yeah, so we had narrowed gone through a bunch. So I think when we did them, we had meaningful work, resilient business environment, entrepreneurship, opportunities, job attraction and creation, development, vibrant downtowns, and housing. And I went through meaningful work and living wages. I think what I did was I split the first one. Yeah, so the first one was meaningful work and human needs, and I split that into 2 goals. So rather than having one goal, and again, we can put them back together, but I was really kind of looking at increasing opportunities, meaningful work, and percentage of positions that pay livable wage, and then those services that support that, increasing quantity and quality of affordable housing, childcare, as they're essential to a thriving and successful workforce. Additionally, maintaining a mix of land uses and improving access to affordable public transportation are key to fair and equitable access to employment for all residents. So I was trying to capture a couple of those human needs. So, because our first ones, remember, our aspiration A was about the workforce. And so the meaningful work, the necessary workforce services, and that was mostly what went to those. And then I looked at entrepreneurship, job attraction, and creation were very similar. So I combined those 2. So we had resilient business environment. I combined entrepreneurship, job creation, and expansion. Those kind of all go together. And development was looking at the building stock and utilities and facilities and vibrant downtown. So I don't think development, vibrant downtown. So the housing was in number 7, which was kind of grouped in with the economic development side, and I had rolled that up to be part of that workforce. So you're welcome to disagree with me. So the necessary workforce services was where I put the housing, transportation, and childcare. And a little bit of that comes down to, as I work through the strategies, kind of where the strategies fit. So that was, so I did want to go through and say I tried to keep everything that was there. I just shuffled them a little bit.
I like that you combine some things. I mean, that's what we've been doing with a lot of these. Makes sense to me.
And maybe some of this will make a little bit of sense as we go through the strategies, because, as I said, it went from 7 to 6. Maybe we can crush it down even farther. Again, as I said, when I do this with the committees usually kept things nice and long, and then you guys would come through and start lumping things together, and we would crush them down. So we're kind of trying to do this accordion push and pull to fit everything in and then crush it down at the same time. So under strategies, and hopefully this will help explain why I grouped them the way I did. The first question I have was, in the goals, you guys talk about meaningful work. And I don't know exactly what that is, so I really couldn't come up with strategies for what you envision meaningful work is, unless you were kind of thinking meaningful work is the livable wage.
I think it also went to whatever workforce training we were going to do, or is that? Yeah, we were thinking of, like, if we're going to include anything about childcare, core services, any kind of education and training, that it would all go in there. It looks like, did you put a lot of that stuff in the second goal, the workforce services?
Yeah, I kind of expounded a little bit on that to kind of go through the necessary work services, because I think there are really 3 factors that come in for workforce and economic, 3 big ones, or at least 3 big ones that I kind of key in on. One is affordable housing and affordable housing. From a workforce standpoint, you can have all the jobs that you want, but if nobody can afford to live there, then that's going to impact the workforce. The next one is childcare. This pandemic showed the impact of childcare. Our workforce has dropped by 400 people. We haven't increased people on unemployment. Our unemployment rate's as low as it was before, but we have 400 people less, and that goes to 2 factors. One being number of people that retired, and a number of generally women who are now staying home to take care of their children. And a lot of that's due to a lack of childcare. So childcare does affect your workforce. And then a third one, which usually you'll hear a lot about from housing advocates, is transportation. So, having people, especially talk about a STO, a lot of low-income jobs, but a lot of high-price houses. So people have to figure out how to travel from Morrisville or from surrounding towns to STO to go to work, to get home. So transportation is a key barrier to economic development. So that was why I picked those 3. People have other ones.
I almost feel like meaningful work was a carryover from something else, that we just kept bringing along with us. And, if you look at, all the data as people are trying to understand this great resignation and, whatever we are, 2% off of the labor force, or 5%, depending on what numbers you look at. The issue is that people are defining meaningful work very differently. I don't think that's our job to define. I think we could just strike it and we'd be okay.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like meaningful work for educated people seems fairly fraught with I don't know. It seems like it is left over from words that sound good, but when you think about it,
Good
it
words for the
seems
chapter, maybe not good words for an implementation strategy.
yeah, it
How are we going
seems
to implement meaningful work? I don't think we can. I don't think we do.
it seems like it also risks sounding fairly elitist as well, unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So I think of, yeah, I'm fine with removing that. I think of aspiration A as the people aspiration and aspiration B as the economy aspiration. Um, I noticed that Mike moved like job creation stuff from an A goal into a B goal. So I want to pull that out and say, do we think of job creation as a people thing, or do we think of it as an economy thing? And that goes into like how we craft the goals.
Yeah, and I mean, we can get into it a little bit when we get there. Job creation, I see as something we work with businesses to create jobs. I don't think we necessarily work with the individual people. If somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, we're usually helping them. We help them from a business standpoint, which is why I kind of moved it to more the business side. But I think we can.
I mean, I think when and I don't know if we've ever been engaged in something like this or successfully, but certainly you look at places that have competed for, companies that are trying to expand to make their communities more attractive. And if we wanted to take that approach, that would be job creation, right? We're trying to create whatever it is, tax incentives or some reason that, Montpelier is the best place. But I don't know if we've ever done that. I know when I lived in Northfield, there was this whole idea that we were going to do that because we had some industrial space that was underutilized and their economic development committee was working on it. I don't think they had any major success after 3 or 4 years of trying to draw people into some of those underused commercial spaces. So I guess I'm just saying I don't know if that's a priority for the city or not, trying to attract employers.
Yeah, but I think the key is within the strategies we're working with businesses in job creation. We're not looking at, say, we're going to do job creation by bringing in a whole bunch of workers, and then we'll figure out what to do with them once we've got them here. We're not looking at the worker side in job creation. We've been doing job creation with the businesses to create the jobs, and then we bring in people to fill those jobs. A little semantical, but the first two, the livable wage and the workforce development, I think very, directly are trying to target the workforce. And so I guess with that, I tried to take mostly what you guys had as things and try to massage them into what would be one of our 5 Ps, the programs and the policies and the permits and those. So, the livable wages, livable wage study, livable business marketing program, and livable wage incentive policy. Again, not necessarily really strongly in support of a couple of these, but trying to capture what it was we were trying to do and turn it into an action. I think the livable wage study would be a good place to start to understand, what does the landscape look like? If we want livable wages, how are we doing? We know we've got some of the highest wages in Washington County. Where are we falling short? Is it specific sectors? Is it just retail? Is it restaurant? What are, where are the places we're succeeding? Where are the places we're falling short on livable wages?
What is this going to tell us?
Well, I think the goal was, grab the right mouse here, increase opportunities for meaningful work, which we can take out, and the percentage of positions that pay a living wage. So the goal was to increase the percentage of positions that pay a livable wage and maintain an educated and trained workforce. So if that's our goal, if our goal is to increase those opportunities, increase the percentage of positions that pay a livable wage, I think one thing we need to do is to understand, where the barriers are to doing that. And then somebody else, not me, had recommended, Montpelier should develop a program that allows business to verify that they pay a living wage so it can be used as a marketing for that business. I'm not sure. I mean, a similar example wouldn't be municipal is, the sustainably harvested timber. There's now a third-party seal of approval that you could get that the wood you buy to build your house has been sustainably harvested and managed. They're great for marketing. I don't think that's effectively something the city of Montpelier would be able to do. But again, if just trying to follow through with an idea somebody had, how would you implement it? This is kind of how you'd implement it. And then the livable wage incentive policy just goes through, and I wasn't going to go through and list them all separately, but Montpelier should adopt a policy to apply economic development incentives such as TIF, tax stabilization, and any economic development RLFs, revolving loan funds, to favor or apply only to businesses that provide a living wage. Right now we have, which you'll see later on, some programs that we have like our tax stabilization policy where you can get certain amounts, but if you want to go from a 3-year tax stabilization to a 5-year tax stabilization, then you need to be paying a living wage to the people who are going to be working there. So it becomes a requirement. So we can't require people to pay living wages, but we can encourage people to do it. So again, this kind of comes back a little bit to that initial thing. I think livable wages is a laudable goal and objective. I just think it's one of those ones that's just really hard for local governments to be, really kind of getting in there. How much time do we spend trying to increase the percentage of livable wage jobs?
We're a city of like 8,000 people. I don't feel like we shouldn't be. The state legislature is having a hard enough time justifying that Vermont can do these things as a state of like 645,000 people.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, and who knows what, I think this whole idea of, the entire economy is changing underneath us, right? And the idea of the discussion of livable wage is, I don't know if we're going to be having it. Maybe we'll be having it, but supply and demand are going to, we got people in Burlington, they're paying $30 an hour for pizza delivery guys and they can't get people to sign up. So I don't know. I wonder, I don't know even where that came from. If we go back to the aspiration, do we just want to have a resilient job market, encourage workforce development, because that's probably something we can do. Sufficient housing and services for all members of the workforce. Do we need to even work that living wage in there? I think it was in the old plan, and we just probably carried it over, and everybody wants everyone to make enough money that they can live, obviously. But I think in terms of what we can actually do, I think the reason you're having a hard time coming up with good strategies, Mike, and all of us is because you can't really affect it with a city of, like you were saying, 8,000 people.
Yeah, it's certainly a city, not necessarily, it was of a previous council. Councils haven't changed very much, but a previous councilor had this as a living wage as a big pillar of what she was pushing for. So,
and I even wonder, like with the tax subsidies and stuff, you get some tax break for paying a livable wage. We're just redistributing money to pay somebody a wage, right? Because we're just taking it out of tax coffers. What is it that we're really accomplishing by doing that?
Yeah, I think the example I used last time was one of the issues is that the jobs that pay a living wage generally are the jobs that require specialized training or specialized degrees. So the beneficiaries of the recent tax stabilizations, where people have said, I'm going to pay a living wage, I should get a tax stabilization, is all jobs that, required some specialized amount of training. And so, yeah, we increased the number of those jobs. But they aren't jobs that just anybody, it's not like we've helped our retail or our store employees get any more money. We still have the same number of people earning an unlivable wage. We've just increased the number of people making a living wage, so we have increased our percentage. But I think our key, if we were going to look at this, my personal opinion is, the key would be to identify the people who aren't making a living wage and identify what are the things we as a municipality can do. I don't know if there is much, but are there things that we can do that would help them increase their income so they're not, in that unlivable wage income area. And I don't know if that's more workforce development. Again, but there's got to be, as you said, there has to be somebody who delivers the pizzas. We've got an economy where we need people to deliver pizzas. And I don't know. That's a policy issue. But as I said, I put a bunch in here just to remind everybody and remind the public if they're watching. There's a number of things in here that doesn't necessarily mean I support them. They're just, I try to put things out there to get people thinking, and we can go through and remove them, adjust them, and take them.
Mike, thank you for doing some work on that. Kirby, I know I personally didn't have a chance to really dig into that. I was reading the memo for the changes, and so maybe it's just something we could take on as homework and be more informed to comment on next time we're together.
Yeah, and I think that was the plan all along, because this was kind of our backup item for tonight anyway. I think we could take this on and try to get actually through it at our next meeting, because it's going to be the main thing we do then. I think that all of us are trying to figure out what vision makes sense. It sounds like from the people I've heard from tonight, it sounds like there might be interest in trying to strip down economic development to the most achievable things and concentrating in the areas we think are the most achievable. And if we can think about for next time, like what that might look like, I think I could be on board with that. I do want to make sure that we include the connections we have to Montpelier Alive and to what the parks director had told us that he wanted to do for economic development, because I think that's just us synchronizing with other efforts that are going on,
Mike,
but
did you carry some of those recreational things that were really good?
Yeah, we'll get to some of them as we get down through to the lower ones, and some of them I had to point out. You'll see a couple of them are highlighted to go and say using chapter, not an implementation plan. I think a couple of them were good text pieces. A couple of them that I lumped together. So you'll notice under workforce development program, we had talked about getting a staff person to connect people needing to upskill, and then also I figured that same position could also connect employers who need workers, and the program could also be used with the state to provide satellite offices in Montpelier for services like adult education, CCB, and voc rehab. So I tried to kind of take what were three separate ideas and figured they're not going to operate without a workforce development. So if we just called it, we want to have a workforce development program, it's just an idea. And if we're going to do it, it's not a one thing. It's we hire somebody and they work on a number of different items. And so that was why I kind of grouped those three into one. We could certainly add more pieces to that if we have other ideas. But that was where I lumped a few of them together.
I don't know if it's worth doing. I mean, it's a little bit of a step back, but just as we really start working on this, just a thought. I was at Association of General Contractors of Vermont, had their annual meeting in December, and there was a I'd have to find his name, but there was a state economist that came in and did a presentation on sort of the outlook moving forward. Now, it was very housing focused, but it was really good. It kind of level set everybody, you know, the conversations throughout the day. And I wonder if I could find out who that was to bring somebody in for 15 minutes and just give us sort of their what the state's macro outlook is and maybe what it might mean to a community like this, if that would be worthwhile, or we feel like, hey, we've already kind of done that in past meetings.
Was
Before
it
I
Tom
joined the board.
Cavett? Is it Tom Cavett? Does that ring a bell?
Jeff Carr.
Oh, Jeff Carr.
I don't know his name. I'd have to go back and take a look, but it sounds like somebody you guys probably work with, right? He was really good. It was very, very useful information. I would just say that.
He shows up in our world sometimes, I think.
Kirby, I'll get you the name. I mean, if you think it might be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, or you could just pass along, like, if there were materials, you could pass them along to us about the housing outlook. I would be, I guess, I have no idea what the state economist is saying about that. I would be interested. Okay, that sounds like a plan for next time. I want to give everyone one related heads up. Did I ever report back after speaking with Dan Groberg? So I spoke, like, we got distracted with the hearings about the zoning bylaws and stuff, so I don't think I ever reported back. I had Dan review just where we were at a couple of months ago or a month ago on economic development. The gist of his feedback was, you know, he was happy that we had things in there that went along with what he was trying to do. And I don't know him very well, but this seems like maybe a personality thing. His response was, I don't object to anything in there. So he doesn't object. That was the feedback from Dan. So it seems like everything's fine there. But, you know, as we get farther along, share whatever newer version of things we have with him. Okay. Let's review the minutes. You might end up finishing early, which will be helpful for me because I'm going to do additional work on our memo. So if everyone can take a minute to review all of the minutes attached to the email from Mike. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And so we'll spend a couple minutes doing that, and then if anyone sees anything in any of those minutes, let us know.
I need to be added as present to the 12-13 minutes.
December 13th.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't on the previous two for travel, but I was at the 13th hearing.
Okay. We have that noted.
Otherwise, well, do you want to do them all together? I don't know if I should make a motion to approve all 4 of them since I wasn't at the first 2. But I could second.
Yeah, I think we should do them all together if everyone's comfortable with it.
I make a motion to approve all the minutes.
With that change of adding me on the 13th?
Yes, of course, without a change.
Thank you. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second, a motion from Gabe and a second from Marcella. Any discussion, any further amendments before we vote? Is everyone ready to vote? Anyone need a minute? Okay, so I'm not hearing that there's any further discussion. So those in favor of approving Gabe's motion to approve the minutes with the one change to add Marcella to the December 13th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So the minutes for
Thomas
October
Cavett.
was-
Sorry. Was that the name you were talking about?
Yeah.
That was my guess, so I win
That's
the
who it
prize.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me just double check. Our next meeting is scheduled for Valentine's Day. Are we going to have big issues? Disappointed spouses and significant others?
I always do my partying after the planning commission meeting, so I'm good. And that's not actually false.
Just making sure we don't get to the 14th and have everybody go, kind of. I promise.
Yeah, that's a good point. Does anyone know that they won't be able to make it because of that?
Because the only other option is next Monday, 5th Monday. So
I feel like these questions are too personal.
I think I'll be okay, Mike.
All right.
Like, how sad are we all?
Exactly.
What are we going to do on Valentine's Day?
I mean, some of us have kids, so like you could use that as an excuse. I'm sticking with mine. My plans are going to take place after the meeting. So.
Okay.
All right, so it sounds like we're good for that.
It's COVID.
Okay.
I'm not going out to dinner anyways.
Oh, Mike, were you kind of asking for yourself? Did you want the
No.
night off?
Nope. I just in past years, yes, it could have been a big issue. This
Okay.
year, no, not with COVID. No big dates.
Okay. So it sounds like we're still good for that. On that note, do we have a motion to adjourn?
You do.
Motion from Aaron. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Nobody wants to leave?
I
I'll
second.
second, I'll
I
second.
second.
Gabe can second.
Yeah, motion from Aaron and a second from Gabe. Those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All right. See you on Valentine's Day, folks.
Losers.
The way I see it, I have